You wake up and the world is already loud. Before your feet hit the ground, there's a buzz messages, headlines, alerts, a whirlwind of opinions spinning before you've even had a thought of your own. You step into your day and it feels like you're already behind. Everyone is moving, everyone has something to show, to prove, to post. But deep inside, there's a quiet voice whispering not to move faster, but to slow down. Because growth doesn't shout. It never has. It doesn't live in trending metrics or external praise. It starts somewhere quieter, in the space between distractions, in the moment you pause and ask, what am I really becoming? And that's why this video exists. If you're someone who craves calm in the chaos, who wants to grow without needing to be seen, who wonders if it's still possible to build a life of depth in a world that rewards noise, then you're in the right place. This journey is for you. And if this resonates, if it helps you feel seen or steady, consider subscribing to the channel. We walk this Stoic path together. Now back to the noise. The Stoics lived in busy cities too, bustling markets, political tension, endless demands. Marcus Aurelius ran the Roman Empire, yet still carved time to write quietly in his journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. You remember this. You do not need to respond to everything. Not every headline deserves your outrage. Not every opinion deserves a reply. Imagine you're standing in a crowded square. People are yelling, selling, fighting, preaching. But you step back into the temple, where it's quiet, where the air is still, where your thoughts return to you. That's your power. You get to choose where your focus goes. So ask yourself, what has been stealing your attention lately, and what has it left you with in return? You don't need to escape the world to find peace. You just need to return to yourself. You pause, not to scroll, not to check, not to escape, but to ask yourself a deeper question: who am I becoming? Not in the eyes of the world, but when no one's watching, it's easy to forget. To become a product of the feed, the schedule, the trends. To let yourself blur into someone else's idea of progress. But the Stoics urge you come back to yourself. In ancient Greece, carved above the entrance to the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, were the words, "Know thyself." It wasn't a suggestion, it was a warning that without self-knowledge, you might live someone else's life, climb someone else's mountain, and at the top feel empty. You don't want that. You're here because something in you craves depth over noise, integrity over speed, alignment over applause. So, you begin again. You reflect on what matters to you, not what's trending. You ask quietly, what are the values that shape me? The virtues that guide me? Not goals, not tasks, but the kind of person you want to be when no one's tracking it. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This is your moment to say it. Are you someone who values honesty even when it's hard? Someone who seeks calm over chaos? Who doesn't need to win the race, only to run it the right way? You don't need to answer out loud, but write it somewhere. Say it to yourself. Let your identity stop drifting and start anchoring. Because when you know who you are, it becomes much harder to get lost. And even when distractions come, and they always do, you'll return to this steady place. So now ask yourself, what part of you have you neglected that you now want to return to? You don't need a full plan. You just need to remember. You've been stretched thin, your time shared with too many things, your mind pulled in a dozen directions, your energy scattered like raindrops trying to water too many fields at once. And you wonder, why am I not growing the way I hoped? Why do I feel so drained even when I'm doing everything right? The Stoics would gently tell you, you're focusing on too much that isn't yours. One of the most powerful Stoic ideas is this: the dichotomy of control. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth when he wrote, "You have to assemble your life action by action and be satisfied if each one achieves its goal as far as it can, not what others think." You pause and look around at what you've allowed into your circle: expectations, drama, things that seem urgent but aren't essential, news that doesn't change your day but ruins your mood. And here's the truth: not everything deserves your reaction. Not everyone deserves your explanation. Not every opportunity is meant for you. So, you draw the circle tighter. You shrink your focus not because you're giving up, but because you're sharpening your strength. Think of a candle. It burns brighter when protected from the wind. You imagine your life the same way. A calm, steady flame fed only by what truly matters. You start saying no, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You're not available for things that don't help you grow. You stop checking every message. You stop pleasing every voice. You stop trying to be everywhere for everyone. And suddenly you feel space, not empty space, but open ground, where something real can grow. So ask yourself, what are you giving energy to that doesn't return it? And what would happen if you stopped? You don't need to control the world. You only need to control the space you choose to stand in. You've made promises before, big ones. This year I'll change everything. And for a while, you did. Until the motivation faded, until life pushed back, until the noise returned. The Stoics weren't impressed by grand declarations. They trusted something quieter: rituals, daily practices, small acts done consistently that reshape who you are from the inside out. Seneca said, "Each day acquires from the day before it an increase in worth." That's the Stoic approach. Not dramatic goals, but the discipline of today. And then, again tomorrow. You stop chasing perfection. You start honoring rhythm. Think of it like water dripping onto stone. It seems like nothing at first, but over time it carves something lasting. So what's your morning like? Do you reach for your phone or your thoughts? Do you start with input from the world? A reflection from within? You begin designing tiny rituals, not to impress others, but to align with the person you want to be. Maybe it's 5 minutes of journaling. Maybe it's a slow walk without headphones. Maybe it's asking yourself each morning, what virtue do I want to practice today? You don't need to do everything, just something, and do it again tomorrow. Because when you build from the inside, you don't need constant motivation. You just need momentum, and the rituals you keep start to shape the life you live. So ask yourself, what's one small ritual you could begin tomorrow that your future self would quietly thank you for? Growth doesn't come from a single decision. It comes from the things you repeat, the ordinary done with care, the daily done with purpose. You reach for your phone, not out of intention, but out of habit. 10 seconds of silence and you're already scrolling. Not because you're curious, but because you're avoiding something. And you're not alone. The world has never been more connected or more distracted. The Stoics didn't live in a digital age, but they understood temptation. They knew what it meant to be pulled away from yourself. Epictetus warned, if a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along. That line hits differently now, doesn't it? You think about how often your focus is stolen by someone else's agenda, someone else's drama, someone else's product. But what if you guarded your mind as fiercely as your time, as carefully as your money? You begin to see your attention as sacred, not something to give away freely, but something to protect. You imagine yourself as a modern warrior, not with a sword, but with silence, with boundaries, with the strength to close the app and open your eyes. So, you set limits. You log off when the noise gets too loud. You uninstall what feeds your restlessness. You stop mistaking stimulation for nourishment, and slowly you feel your focus return. not all at once. But like the tide coming home, you start noticing things again. The way the light moves through your room, the sound of your own breath, the subtle shift in your thoughts when they're not being interrupted. This is your armor, not to escape the digital world, but to move through it with strength. So ask yourself, what digital habit is stealing your presence? And what would happen if you took that presence back? Your mind is not a marketplace, it's a sanctuary. Treat it like one. You do something good, and you wait for a like, for a nod, for someone to tell you it mattered. And when no one says anything, you wonder if it was worth it at all. But then you remember what the Stoics taught, that praise and criticism are both just echoes. They don't change the value of what you did, they only change the volume around it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. So today, you untie yourself. You begin to let go of both applause and judgment, because both come from the outside, and your growth must come from within. You reflect, how often have you hesitated, not because something was wrong, but because you worried what others would think? How many good ideas never left your lips? How many honest actions were softened just to avoid discomfort? But what if you let that go? What if you allowed your values, not their opinions, to be your compass? You don't need to rebel loudly, just to stand quietly, like a tree rooted deep. It doesn't bend with every wind, it grows, regardless of who's watching. You imagine that now, yourself grounded, not needing to defend your path, not needing to advertise your virtue, just doing what's right because it's right. You'll be praised sometimes, you'll be criticized other times. Both are weather, but you're the mountain. So ask yourself, what would you still do even if no one ever noticed? That is where your true growth begins. You're not here to perform, you're here to become. There's a moment in your day, or maybe there isn't yet, when everything pauses. No notifications, no calls, just stillness. At first it feels strange, like something's missing, but soon you begin to feel it. The return of your own thoughts, the quiet voice beneath the noise. The Stoics made time for this. Even Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, wrote in the quiet margins of his day, not for an audience, but for himself. People look for retreats for themselves, he said, in the country, by the coast, or in the mountains. You are able at any time you want to retreat into yourself. You don't need to flee to a cabin. You don't need to book a silent retreat. You just need an hour, or maybe just 10 minutes, where nothing is expected of you, where you are not producing, consuming, reacting, only being. You might call it your still hour. It doesn't need to be literal. It doesn't even need to be 60 minutes, but it should feel sacred, undisturbed. This is where reflection happens. This is where clarity grows. This is where you ask not what's urgent, but what's important. You picture a philosopher seated alone by a flickering lamp, scrolls at his side, but the real wisdom coming not from the words, but from the silence between them. You want that too. Not the lamp or the scrolls, but the presence. So you begin. You close the door, you set the phone down. You listen not to the world, but to yourself. And you realize, this quiet is not empty. It's full of answers you've been too busy to hear. So ask yourself, when in your day will you make room to return to yourself? Not for escape, but for realignment. Growth begins in action, but it's remembered in stillness. Honor that hour. It may be the most important one you keep. You used to think growth was loud. Big changes, big wins, big announcements. But now, you begin to see it differently. Growth isn't always visible. Sometimes it's subtle in how you pause before reacting, in how you choose silence over impulse, in how you carry yourself when no one's looking. The Stoics never chased spectacle. They weren't seeking applause or transformation overnight. They believed in quiet revolutions, in becoming better moment by moment without needing recognition. Seneca once wrote, "Progress is not achieved by luck or accident, but by working on yourself daily." You picture it now, not like a firework, but like a seed. Beneath the soil, it splits, it struggles, it reaches towards something it cannot yet see. No one cheers for it, no one sees its first inch of effort. But that doesn't stop it, and that's you. Quiet, determined, growing in the unseen spaces. You stop needing to show your growth, you start needing to feel it. You don't have to post about your discipline. You don't have to share your every insight. You don't need validation to make it real. Your growth isn't content, it's character. And when the world around you speeds up, you slow down. Not because you're falling behind, but because your roots are deepening. So ask yourself, what quiet changes have you made this year that no one else noticed, but you know they matter? That's real. That's lasting. That's the kind of growth storms can't shake. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to continue. Because the best transformations happen not with noise, but with stillness, intention, and time. You miss a day, you slip. You scroll longer than you meant to. You react instead of reflect. And a small voice inside says you failed. But the Stoics never asked for perfection. They asked for honesty, for responsibility, for the willingness to begin again without shame. Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Growth isn't a straight line, it's messy. Some days you rise early, clear and calm. Other days you oversleep and feel lost. Both days matter, both are part of becoming. Think of the sea, it pulls back before it surges forward. Waves crash, then recede. But they always move in rhythm, never perfect, but always in motion. So you let go of the illusion, of the perfect routine, of the perfect mindset, of the perfect self. You realize progress is showing up again, even after the misstep. It's the moment you take a breath and choose differently. It's the quiet decision to return without judgment. You stop measuring yourself only by outcomes. You start paying attention to your efforts. You notice the small wins. You forgive the stumbles. And something inside you softens, not weakens, softens. Because this kind of self-compassion is not indulgent. It's powerful. It allows you to keep going when perfection would have told you to quit. So ask yourself, where have you been holding yourself to a standard that isn't fair or even human? And more importantly, what would it look like to simply begin again? You're not here to be flawless. You're here to grow. And real growth doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. You've been working on yourself, reading, reflecting, rebuilding habits. But now you pause and ask the deeper question, what is all this growth for? Not in a cynical way, but in a grounded, stoic way. Because to the Stoics, virtue wasn't just personal, it was practical. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness, your discipline, your focus, your calm. These aren't just for your benefit, they're so you can be more steady, more clear for others." You begin to see your life not as a performance, but as a service. Not how successful can I become, but how useful can I be? Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't seek attention, it doesn't move, but its stillness, its light, guides others safely to shore. That's you, not loud, not trying to convince, just consistent, centered. A quiet force that steadies those around you. You don't need to be a hero. You don't need to save the world, but you can hold space. You can bring calm into chaotic rooms. You can listen. You can lead without shouting, and slowly, you realize that your inner growth has become something larger. You've stopped needing to fix people. You just become the kind of person who makes it easier for others to stand up straighter. So ask yourself, where in your life can your calm become someone else's anchor? This is the part the world forgets. that the best kind of growth is the kind that ripples not in applause but in quiet usefulness. Your growth doesn't end with you. That's where it begins. You've come a long way, not just through this reflection, but through the quiet moments. You chose truth over comfort, stillness over speed, progress over perfection, and now you look ahead, not to a perfect life, but to a path yours alone. The Stoics never promised ease. They never sold success in 10 steps. What they offered was clarity, a way to live even when the world pulls at you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. You carry that power now, to choose how you respond, to choose what you pursue, to choose who you're becoming. You no longer need to chase everything. You no longer need to prove yourself to everyone. You've drawn the circle tighter. You've returned to what matters. This doesn't mean you'll never feel distracted again. You will, but now you'll notice it sooner. You'll return to yourself faster. You've built something, a rhythm, a mindset, a set of inner tools. And when life gets loud again, and it will, you'll pause, you'll breathe. You'll remember who you are. This year is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully you. So ask yourself, what does your growth look like? Not on a screen, but in your everyday actions. How will you walk the rest of this year intentionally, courageously, quietly? No one else needs to understand. They'll feel it when they're near you, because you're no longer just learning Stoicism. You're living it, and the path ahead, it's already waiting for your next step. You sit with everything now, not rushing to apply it all, but letting it settle, like dust after a long day. You don't need to remember every quote. You don't need to master every practice. You just need to remember. This growth is not a performance. It's not a race. It's not loud. It's in how you hold yourself when no one's watching. It's in the pause before you speak, in the breath before you react, in the decision to begin again gently. You have learned to see yourself clearly, to guard your focus, to deepen your roots and become useful to others in a quiet, steady way. That's Stoicism, not coldness, not detachment, but calm strength under pressure, stillness in motion, and virtue in action. So when the world tries to pull you away from yourself, come back here. Revisit these words. Revisit your breath. Revisit the person you've been becoming all along, and carry that calm forward, not perfectly, but persistently. That's more than enough.